this for me. Go and look after this for me. Record it, huh?
Video.
And do it this way. You record it.
Like that. Keep it up, please. We'll just start with the angle and just leave it.
Hang on. Good shot. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم فقهنا في الدين وعلمنا التأويل وجعلنا من الهداة المهتدين. This is the second lecture of the book by Sheikh Muhammad Taymiyyah, al-Qawaid, al-Arba. And last week we took the first principle and the second principle. But before we get into the lecture, I just wanted to make a couple of announcements. The first one is that Masjid Table website is being updated, so keep an eye on that for activities for the masjid and for durus as well, regular durus with other speakers as well, bi'idhnillah. And now we have a WhatsApp service also. The number is at the bottom of the website, at the bottom of the page, so you can keep updated with that also, and you can send in queries, suggestions, anything, just to keep it updated. We also have a Friday class group, so we can add you to that if you text your number and your name. The second sort of announcement is that there are certain people saying that the durus are a bit late. Yes, it's 10 o'clock at night and we will finish around about 11:30, 11:15. It's a bit difficult. But when I was looking at this new calendar, I mean, this period is only going to be for the next 3 weeks, 4 weeks. So it's difficult for people inside of Leicester and the brothers that are coming from outside of Leicester also understand that. And ask Allah to reward us for the difficulties and everything that we put forward for the sake of Allah. But at the end of the month, Salatul Maghrib will be around about 9 o'clock, which would make here Salatul Isha about 11:15. So you'll be getting home bi'idhnillah about 11:30. It's still pretty late, but as you can see, the time is going to go down. So it's only a few weeks. Then bi'idhnillah, we'll be in a regular pattern. The other thing is, if we keep changing the time, then there's not going to be a time that I think that's going to suit everyone. Generally, after Maghrib is a good time, and I believe Sheikh Abu Sahib, he comes after Salatul Asr, I believe, at the end of every month. And I think his durus end up finishing about 8 o'clock. So we don't want to clash either. So I mean, this bi'idhnillah, if we can just stick to it, have some sabr for a few weeks, then inshallah things will get easier. طيب. So now we have al-Qawaid, al-Arba. And last week we took the first two principles as well as the introduction. Can someone remind us what is the topic of the book? What is the point of the Shaykh writing this book? Yeah, Zain.
I think it's just to show that the non-Muslims at the time of the Prophet believed in certain aspects of Tawheed, but that still didn't make them Muslims.
That's a principle. But what is the topic? Why did he write this book? What's the objective that you can get out of this book? And this is extremely important. Whenever you study any book, you need to understand what is the motive behind the author, so I can understand it. All of the explanation, the side benefits that you get, those are added benefits to the actual text itself, but you have to go away understanding the text itself.
Identify which are the roots that lead to shirk.
To identify what leads to shirk? Possibly, but these 4 qawaid, are they what lead to shirk, or are they shirk itself? Yeah. Excellent. To understand what Tawheed is, and when we are understanding what Tawheed is, we are understanding also what shirk is. But why is this important? None of your actions will be accepted without Tawheed, number one. Allah forgives all sins. So this is similar. That's one of the dalil for that. that Allah forgives all sins except shirk. Therefore, none of your actions will be accepted on the Day of Judgment except through Tawheed, and then, or except through the mercy of Allah, and then the action of Tawheed that you have had yourself. But why else is Tawheed, the differentiation between Tawheed and Shirk, very important? And the Shaykh mentioned this in the introduction himself. He mentioned 3 keys for you to be happy. Zain?
3 keys to be happy are shukr.
Yes, excellent. But why are those 3 keys important to you? This indicates what the book is about. The keys to Jannah and the purpose of your creation. The purpose of your creation. So this topic is talking, or this book is talking about your very existence. And he's giving us 4 qawaid which most of mankind have fallen into, which negate their purpose of existence. And like the Shaykh himself said, nobody would say salah without wudu or any kind of najasa on a person would be valid. All the ai''imah, nobody would accept that. Likewise, when you come on Yawm al-Qiyamah, if you have shirk, then your Islam will not be accepted. And this is what came into the introduction. What was the first principle? So we have 4 qawaid. Al-Arba is called Qawaid al-Arba because there are 4 principles. So what's the very first principle, Zain?
First principle is,
You mentioned it just before, yeah?
shall I mention it again?
Yeah, go on.
First thing is that at the time of the Prophet, the Mushriki used to affirm Allah's lordship,
Yeah.
or either rububiyyah, but that still didn't become Muslim.
Excellent. Saying La ilaha illallah does not necessarily make you a Muslim if you only have Tawheed Rububiyyah. And like the Shaykh also mentioned in the explanation, that the Quraysh also believed in certain names and attributes of Allah. وَلَئِن سَأَلْتَهُمْ مَنْ خَلَقَ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ فَيَقُولُونَ اللَّهُ فَسَيَقُولُونَ اللَّهُ. They will say it is Allah. If you ask them, مَنْ يُدَبِّرُ الْأَمْرَ فَسَيَقُولُ اللَّهُ مَنْ يَخْرُجُ الْحَيَّ مِنَ الْمَيِّتِ وَيُخْرِجُ الْمَيِّتَ مِنَ الْحَيِّ. Who is the one who gives life and death? They will say Allah. Quraysh admitted that. This is connected to the Rububiyyah, and this is connected to some of Allah's names and attributes. But this did not make them Muslim. طيب. Let me ask you a question now. If I say, for example, this is just an example, but there are different examples that we have taken in the book and last week's lesson. If I was to say, for example, Allah protect us, if a person was to say, O Messenger of Allah, cure me. O Messenger of Allah, give me such and such. How do we deem that category of action? Is that shirk? Why is it shirk? Because the person is calling besides Allah. A person is calling besides Allah. And the dalil for this is in the second qa'idah, where the Shaykh said that they say that they are worshipping these objects only to get closer to Allah, or as shafa'ah with Allah, either to get closer or because this person is not sinful and I am sinful. So now this person can act on my behalf. And the Shaykh brings dalil in Surah Zumar, and we don't need to repeat that, but this action would make it an action of kufr and shirk. Okay, if I was to say, oh Allah, forgive me by the virtue of Muhammad. You love Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, so because you love him, forgive me. What do you think? Bid'ah or shirk? What do you think? This is wasila. This is wasila in a way that, now the word wasila refers to somebody asking something, usually somebody asking this thing to get closer to Allah. They will go to an idol, they will go to a messenger, they will go to an angel, and this thing is known as wasila. But wasila can also be bid'ah, and this is an example of wasila, because now you are supplicating to Allah, you're not supplicating to other than Allah, but you are doing something that has no precedence from the time of the Prophet ﷺ. So that's why this would be an act of bid'ah. What if a person went to the grave of the Prophet ﷺ and supplicated to Allah alone? And you ask this person, why are you gone all that way to Medina? Because this place is blessed, my brother. Or this place, or another grave of a wali, or something like this. Is this shirk or is this bid'ah? This is also bid'ah, because the person is still supplicating to Allah alone, but he's added an element which has no dalil for it. So he's not asking the Prophet ﷺ. Also, we saw in the introduction an explanation to shirk. What is shirk? And this is very important. You know why? The ummah today is being corrupted because they don't understand what shirk is.
There's many different types of shirk.
And people are being killed, and lives are being lost, and the whole war in Syria, the whole war in all of these different places is happening because shirk is not happening. And people think that this is far-fetched. You Salafis keep talking about Tawheed and shirk, and all of this is happening in the world. But I'll show you why this is very important. What is shirk? When you associate something with Allah, you make it equal with Allah, or you make it higher than Allah. When you make it equal with Allah, or you make it higher than Allah. I love a certain sport. Is that shirk? No. It could be sinful, it could be mubah, it might not be. طيب. My level of love for that sport becomes equal with Allah. To the extent that I will compromise some of my duties for Allah, and I have this firm, belief towards this sport. Now it could equate to shirk. I love it more than Allah, and this is clear-cut shirk. And we see this on a daily basis. طيب. The reason why this is important now, I want to go back to what I was saying just a minute ago. You find people, they come with a shubha and they say, look, such and such a government is a non-Muslim government. Even though they say La ilaha illallah, we don't deem them to be Muslim. Why, my brother? They have riba, they are allowing concerts, and they have whatever. Their policies are legislating something which Allah has not legislated, therefore they are not Muslim. We say to you, my brother, okay, you have just pronounced takfir on this person, you said this person is a mushrik. What is shirk? If a person was to engage in riba, does he become a mushrik? Why? Because of this definition. If a person believes that riba is better than the sharia of Allah, it's shirk. Because he's elevated something above Allah. If a person was to say, now let me ask you a question. If a person was to say, okay, Islamic finance is okay, or not indulging in riba and all that, that's okay, that's good for you, my brother. But riba is also okay. It's okay. There's nothing wrong with it, really, if you think about it. I'm buying a house. It's 100 grand. I'm paying about 120. It's going to take me 30 years, 40 years. That's the profit. I understand that. My brother, it says in the Quran, Allah says that riba. No, it's all right. Actually, I think it's all right. What do you think about this now? Why? The person is equating it to Allah's law. If you say anything is equal to Allah and His religion, His law, and His ilm, then you are equating it to Him. Now, this is the matter here. If a person says, I am indulging in riba, my brother, riba is haram, I know, but I'm a weak person. But we need it. I know it's haram, I know it's bad, but we need it in our country because we won't be able to function in the world otherwise. What do you say about that now? Shirk? It's not shirk. He's not equated it to Allah, he's affirmed that it's a sin, and he's not made it higher than the sharia of Allah, and he's affirmed that Allah's law is higher. So this is why this is very, very important, because now what these people have done, they've said, this government, there's no Muslim government in the world, all of them are kuffar, even though they say La ilaha illallah, they established the Hajj, they pray the Salah, etc. None of them are Muslims. So now what they do is they take matters into their own hand, and they've created their own little caliphate, they've created their own little, whatever, and now they're going around killing every single person, even if you say La ilaha illallah. Why? Because you're a mushrik. And they actually believe, and it's in their manifesto, that Mecca, Medina is Darul Harb. It's not even a Muslim land anymore. And this is there. Why? Because they have not understood what shirk is. The Khawarij have taken the word shirk and they've applied taghut and all these things without even understanding them. طيب. Also in the second principle we saw Shaykh al-Islam mention an ayah, وَيَعْبُدُونَ مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ مَا لَا يَضُرُّهُمْ وَلَا يَنْفَعُهُم. And there was a delicate benefit that we took from this last week. Why does Allah say لَا يَضُرُّهُم before وَلَا يَنْفَعُهُم? Does anybody remember? They worship things that can't harm them and cannot benefit them. Why did Allah say harm first? Why didn't Allah say they worship things that can't benefit them and that can't harm them? You see the point here? Why did Allah say harm before benefit and didn't say benefit before harm? Excellent. Ibn Jama'ah, one of the Mufassirun, have said, "Ma la yadur." Usually people, there's another ayah in Surah Furqan where Allah says, "Ma la yanfa' wa la yadur." So yanfa' comes before. And Ibn Jama'ah says here that when it's ease, somebody calls you to follow a Lord and follow a religion. Now, if you were to say that, look, let me worship this idol, Allah protect us, you would think instantly in your fitrah, this thing can't harm me. So in times of ease, in times of being called towards Islam or called towards a religion, called towards worship, you would think, okay, why would I want to worship this thing? So he said, مَا لَا يَضُرُّهُمْ, because even if you worshipped it or you didn't worship it, it cannot harm you in the slightest. If you worshipped it, it can't harm you. If you don't worship it, it can't harm you. There's only one Lord that can actually do that. Ilahul Haqq. But then, مَا لَا يَنْفَعَ, in another ayah, because those people, when it comes to dire need, they will go to these graves, they will go to an idol, they will go to a temple, etc., and they will do shirk, because in times of need, this is when they need shafa'ah and istighatha. So in times of ease, is isti'ana. إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينُ. We need your assistance. But in times of difficulty, usually the words that we are using here is shafa'ah and istighatha. Shafa'ah is intercession, and istighatha is relief. The Shaykh then goes on to talk about two types of shafa'ah, the good type and the bad type. We had the bad types where these things can't benefit you. You will not actually get closer to Allah, you'll actually have your deeds nullified, and you'll actually be further from Allah if you were to worship these things. But the Shaykh actually said that there is tawassul in Ahlul Sunnah, there is shafa'ah in Ahlul Sunnah. Shaykh al-Islam didn't come and he said that there is no such thing as tawassul. This is something that they don't understand. But we have conditions for it. And we had three conditions. Does anybody remember what those three conditions are? Yeah.
To do Allah's names and attributes, to do your own good actions, and to be a righteous person.
Righteous person who is alive and able. These are the types of shafa'ah. But what are the conditions of the shafa'ah? These are two different sort of aspects of shafa'ah. Types, yes. But what are the conditions? Allah permits it. Allah permits it, legislates it. And part of this is the shari'i and the qawni. Shari'i is the legislative permission, and the qawni is the universal permission. Shari'i is that Allah has allowed or legislated for a certain thing to get you closer to Him. Like what the brother has mentioned. You make dua to Allah through His names and His attributes. You can make dua to Allah by your righteous deeds. But also qawni, universal. Can you go to a piece of wood and say, give me shafa'ah, make me closer to Allah? No, because this universal thing within the creation of Allah can't benefit you, can't harm you. So the ability has to be there, given to that thing in order to either make dua on your behalf, etc. طيب, that's number one. What's the second condition?
Allows it to happen.
Allah, that's number one. It's from the Sunnah. Yeah, maybe, but it's kind of like connected to the first one, yeah?
Is it the way of the Salaf? You have to follow the way.
Connected to the way of the Salaf, yes, maybe.
Allah needs to be pleased with the one who is making dua.
Excellent. Allah, من ذا الذي يشفع عنده إلا بإذنه. Can anybody intercede with Allah except that Allah permits it? He is the King of Kings. Can you come to the King of Kings and say, I want to intercede on your behalf without your permission, without you allowing it? That doesn't happen in our dunya affairs. Let alone the King of Kings, the one who has all dominion of the heavens and the earth. He has to allow or be pleased with the one that is interceding on your behalf. And the third one is that he must be pleased with the one who is being interceded for. These are the conditions for الشفاعة المثبتة. طيب, so we stopped at this and now we are on the third principle, but just to quickly check in with Majmu Fatawa of Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah, we kind of got to about the 100-page mark. On page 143, the Shaykh begins a book within a book. And this book is called al-Qawaid al-Jaliyah fi al-Tawassul wal-Wasila. Page 143 of Majmu Fatawa. And in this book, and this kind of goes on to the end, so it's about 200 pages long. In this book, he's talking about the Qawaid and the principles with Ahl Sunnah when it comes to Tawassul and Wasila. And in this book, I mean, it's a book in itself, as we've seen, the amount of pages. But there are three things that I wanted to highlight, which is very, very important for us to understand, and for us as a ummah also to understand. So if you're speaking to somebody, I mean, within this ummah, let's face it, there's people making tawassul, there's people following shirk, and they're still saying La ilaha illallah. And we will see in the fourth principle that these people, inshallah, some of them are excused, some of them that we need to be lenient with, but some of them are doing it on purpose. There is a level of malice and there is a level of... So how do we deal with this? Number one, Shaykh al-Islam in this book has mentioned in page 354 of Majmu', and like I said, that this book is a separate book, so it has its own publication, so the page number there will be different. Page number 34 of the Arabic version of Majmu' Fatawa in Vol.1, he mentions ولا خلاف بين المسلمين أنه لا يشرع أن يقصد صلاة إلى القبر. It is completely, unanimously agreed that it is not permissible for a person to pray on a grave, to pray towards a grave, let alone, I should say this the other way. It's not permissible for you to sit on a grave or walk on a grave, let alone pray on a grave or pray towards a grave. Completely ijma'. There is no difference of opinion from the companions, there's no different opinion from the ulama al-Arba, the four schools. It's never existed. This is point number one. Point number two, on page 355, some people say, okay, so why do you go to Masjid al-Nabawi? The grave's inside the masjid. So I'm going to the Prophet's masjid, and some of them even actually pray behind the grave of the Prophet ﷺ, so they can face the grave whilst they're facing the Qibla also. Some people are a bit more obvious than that. I've actually seen it, you've probably seen it yourselves, where people are outside and they're making sujood and ruku' to the Prophet ﷺ's grave. And inside the masjid itself, you will find them standing as if they are in salat, making dua and making themselves humble to the Prophet ﷺ. None of this, like we said before, has ever existed within the early period of Islam. That's point number one. But the Shaykh mentions a very interesting point here, and you have to look at the hikmah of the Shaykh here now. He said, at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, the house was completely separate. It didn't take the hukam of the masjid. Even though the masjid is built around it right now, you cannot say that that house now becomes part of the masjid. And one of the ulama who was explaining Majmu' Fatawa, he actually said, now if I say to you, for example, I have a garden here, okay, I have a garden or I have a piece of land that I want to sell. But within this piece of land that I want to sell to this brother, there is an annex point, that's mine. There's a fence around it, that's mine, that's not for sale. Some time goes on and I sell the person the land and I extend the deal with him, but that fence remains. Can that person later on say, actually, that's my land now, as well? Bidhulm. In a fiqhi point of view, nobody would accept that. If you've got a neighbor right now, you say to the neighbor, okay, you can take 1 meter of my wall, make your extension, I'll give it to you, sadaqah. Then he comes a year later and he said, well, that meter and then 5 slabs also. It's not permissible. Also, the Shaykh also said, so now we know that the house was separate, it had separate walls, it had a separate roof, and the roof was completely detached from Masjid al-Nabawi. To the extent that Aisha radiallahu anha said that she used to see the sun coming down to the grave of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So this clearly shows that it was separate. The Shaykh says, look at this now. If the Prophet's house was part of the masjid, wouldn't he pray tahiyyatul masjid when he entered his house? But he made it clear to the ummah that he used to make tahiyyat al-masjid when he used to go past that curtain. Completely separate. And that the rawda is not part of the house, it's part بين المنبر والبيت. بين البيت والمنبر. So it's clear that it's not part of the masjid, even if the extension goes around it. That's another point that the Shaykh mentions within this book, al-Qawaid al-Jaliyah. A third point, and this is another very interesting point and a very important point where people have, seem to have lost a definition here. والتوسل به عرف كثير من المتأخرين. Tawassul today, with the later generations, يراد به الإقسام به والسوال به كما يقسمون بغيره من الأنبياء والصالحين. That a person, when he makes tawassul, he wants to make tawassul through a righteous person, either it's a prophet, but he says here, Shaykh al-Islam, that this was not known, this is something which was known later on and not known with the early generation of Islam. On page 326, he then says that at-tawassul, at the time of the companions, was tawassul when the person was alive and able to do that for you. And then the definition got twisted. Now, this leads on to our next point. So if this is the case, when did grave worship actually start? If you're saying to me now that the companions never went to a grave, the Salaf of the Ummah never went to a grave, Abu Hanifa, Malik, Shafi, Imam Ahmad, may Allah have mercy on them all, never went to a grave, and it's not written in their fiqh books that we can go to a grave and ask the person in the grave, when did it actually begin? Because this is what we are saying here. They never knew anything of it. It was always, this is something which we have to remember now, it was always a fiqhi issue. Like we said before, if you go to the grave of the Prophet ﷺ and you make dua to Allah, I am standing at this place because I think there is virtue in this place, but I'm always making dua to Allah. I mean, if it's in the Qibla, this is what they discussed. The four madhabs. The four madhabs never ever discussed, never even thought in their mind that a person would say, let me go ask the Prophet himself. Never existed. It has always been a fiqhi issue. And we know this with the next point. But Shaykh al-Islam elsewhere said that grave worship began by a group of people called the Qaramita. And this was a Muslim empire, which was a Shia empire. And they are heavily, until today, involved in seeking intercession for people in the graves, asking the deceased. And they actually even believe that some of the imams have rububiyyah, not even just uluhiyyah, but they have rububiyyah, that they can control the universe. And this is why they have certain imams that they believe in. This began in the 3rd century. Qaramita. And what makes this even more obvious, Ibn Khuzaymah, one of the A'immah of Hadith, he has a book called Kitab al-Tawheed himself. And this is, connected to what we were saying before last week, that the Shaykh himself didn't author things from his own head. We have one of the Imams of the Salaf had a book called Kitab al-Tawheed. Ibn Khuzaymah has a book called Kitab al-Tawheed. And in Kitab al-Tawheed, and Ibn Khuzaymah passed away 311 after Hijrah. So this is the 4th century of Islam. And he said in this that I have never heard, is it conceivable that a person, that an imam, can say that you can go to a grave and ask the person in the grave? He said this in Kitab Tawheed. So if he's saying it's not conceivable in the 4th century, then it was either coming around at that time, or it hadn't reached him yet. But the point here is that it was introduced way after the Prophet ﷺ, almost 300 years, probably even more. And this is after the period of the 4 Imams of the schools of thought. Now, mentioning these schools of thought, Shaykh al-Islam, Majmu Fatawa, page 352 now, وَمَذْهَبْ أَئِمَّةِ al-Arba. What is the ruling with the 4 scholars, the 4 schools of thought when going to the Prophet ﷺ's grave? Because now here we're talking about tawassul. Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah came in the 8th century. So shirk was rampant then. Sufis, etc. were rampant then. Grave worshipping was rampant. So he is saying now, you are going to the Prophet ﷺ's grave. We're talking about the Prophet ﷺ as an example because he's the highest example when it comes to creation. If we are saying that you can't even ask the Prophet ﷺ, then what about an angel? What about a tree? So now he is saying, what is the opinion of the four madhahib going to the grave of the Prophet ﷺ? Malik, wa Abu Hanifa, wa Shafi, wa Ahmad, wa ghayruhum min al-a'immat al-Islam, أن الرجل إذا سلم على النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم وأراد أن يدعو لنفسه فإنه يستقبل القبلة. If a person goes to Medina and he wants to say salam to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he says Salamu alayka ya Rasulullah, give salam to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But if he wants to make dua, what does he do? يستقبل القبلة. It is not permissible for him to make dua facing, we're talking about dua to Allah. Because remember, they didn't even think, the four madhabs, they didn't think that a person would face the Prophet ﷺ and make dua to the Prophet ﷺ. The question here is, can you make dua to Allah facing the Prophet ﷺ's grave? You see the difference? That's a fiqhi issue. That's bid'ah, not shirk. Now the Shaykh is saying here that after a period of time, people have introduced this and it's not even known according even to their own madhabs. Then the Shaykh goes on, and this is very important here, that he said that the ulama, the majority of the ulama, so now here we're talking about Shafi and Ahmad, etc., have said that it is not permissible for a person to make dua to Allah facing the grave of the Prophet ﷺ, you face the Qibla. Imam Malik said it is not permissible for a person to say, I have visited the grave. Why? Because a person now will think that I have come to Medina for the sake of the grave, not for the sake of the masjid. Prophet ﷺ said, لا تشد الرحال إلا لثلاث. Don't go and make a journey of worship except for three places. Masjid al-Haram, Masjid al-Nabawi, and Masjid al-Aqsa. So when you go to Medina, what do you go with the intention for? Imam Malik said, if you go with the intention to visit the grave, then this is haram. طيب. This is point number one with Imam Malik in his madhab. Point number two with Imam Malik in his madhab. Is it permissible for you to visit the grave on a regular basis? Imam Malik said that it's not permissible and it's an innovation. It's not permissible and it's an innovation. And he used as proof that Ibn Umar, who was a resident in Medina, who would only visit the grave after he used to come back from a journey. And he used to go give salam to the Prophet ﷺ, he used to give salam to Abu Bakr, and he used to give salam to his father, who was next to Abu Bakr. Imam Malik is very strict. But when we're at the grave, Abu Hanifa is the strictest. He said that it's not permissible for you to face the grave. The other ulama said you can face the grave and say salam. Abu Hanifa said that would mean you're turning your back to the Qibla. It's not allowed. You walk straight, you say Assalamu alaykum ya Rasulullah, and you carry on going. If you want to make dua, go over there, make dua, face the Qibla. So now this is clearly showing to us two things. Number one, that it was a fiqh issue. It never even conceived, it was nothing that even entered the mind of Abu Hanifa, Malik, Shafi, Ahmed, that you go to the grave and ask, make tawassul for somebody who has passed away. And number two, so it's always been a fiqh issue. And number two, this aqidah aspect was introduced by some of the most vilest people that this ummah has ever seen. You know these people, the Qaramita, you know what they did? Just to give you an insight as to what they did, they actually stole the black stone and they took it with them. When Ahl Sunnah became powerful again, what they did is they smashed the black stone. You're not having it, we're not having it, they smashed it. If anybody has the honor of kissing the black stone today, or even if you Google the image, it has nails in it. And it has plates, because it had to be patched together. They destroyed the black stone. I mean, this is from Jannah, and Umar radiallahu anh said that if it has no real relevance, if the Prophet didn't do it, I would have done it. What did they do? When they took over as an empire, they went and they massacred the Sunnis, and they threw them into the well of Zamzam. They did this in Mina, and he did this, some of the reports are saying that they did this while some of them were making tawaf. These are the people who introduced grave worship. These are the people who introduced a tawassul in the way that we see it today. But like we said before, tawassul was not known like this at the time of the Sahabas. This is a new definition that they've added for themselves. So now this is very important. When somebody says to you, Sufis was used at the time of the Salaf, tawassul was used at the time of the Salaf, what's your definition, bro? Very important. Yes?
Question. Could you just repeat Imam Abu Hanifa's view regarding
Abu Hanifa, it says here, وقال أبو حنيفة, page 352, Majmu Fatawa. وقال أبو حنيفة, لا يستقبل الحجرة وقت السلام. He is not allowed to face the apartment of Aisha when he is giving salam. كما لا يستقبلها وقت الدعاء باتفاقهم. If you are not allowed to give salam to the Prophet ﷺ and face in the Qibla, then how about making dua to Allah facing the grave? This is the madhab of Abu Hanifa. So what did they say? What do you do? ثم في مذهبه قولان. What is the situation when you're going to Medina? What is the situation? قيل يستدبر الهجرة وقيل يجعلها عن يساره. And this is the most preponderant opinion. Either a person faces the Qibla all the way and he gives salam to the Prophet ﷺ, because this has more honor. The grave is this way, the Qibla is this way, and the grave is that way. So some of the Hanafis say that you face the Qibla at all times. But others say that you just walk straight and you make that, you impartially give salam and you carry on walking. If you make dua, then you go make dua and make face the Qibla. I mean, this is an introduction. We don't want to get too heavy with Majmu Fatawa and a separate book altogether. But just to add another point, which was talking about asking about the virtue of the Prophet ﷺ, or asking at the grave of the Prophet ﷺ. The Shaykh also in this book here on page 330 and 347, he said that the ulama of the Salaf were completely agreed that asking by the virtue of the Prophet ﷺ or the status of the Prophet ﷺ with Allah is an innovation and it is not allowed. Oh Allah, the Prophet ﷺ is beloved to you, and I believe in the Prophet ﷺ is beloved to you, forgive me. What is the ruling now if a person says, oh Allah, I believe in the Prophet ﷺ, forgive me? You see a difference? Is there a difference? There is a difference. Oh Allah, I ask you to forgive me by the virtue that Muhammad ﷺ has with you. Do you love Muhammad ﷺ? I mean, we're saying rhetorically here. Oh Allah, you love Muhammad ﷺ a lot. Because of that, forgive me. That's the first wording. Second wording, oh Allah, I have believed in Muhammad ﷺ, so forgive me. You see a difference? So what's the first one? What's the ruling on the first one? This is bid'ah. This is according to the majority of the ulama. Imam Ahmad said that this is permissible. The first one, asking by the virtue of the Prophet ﷺ. Shaykh al-Islam mentions it here in Qawaid Jaliyah. And this came later on, Imam al-Shawkani and others from the ulama have said that it is permissible. So now here, what we are talking about, we're not going to go away and say, yeah, okay, there's a fringe opinion, let's do it. The point here that I'm trying to make here is that the khilaf that has always existed from the time of the companions and the time of the Salaf of the Ummah has always been a fiqh issue. Imam Ahmad didn't say that you can ask the Prophet ﷺ himself. He is saying you make dua to Allah by the virtue of the Prophet ﷺ. And there's dalil for it if you look at it. Allah says in the Quran, beginning of Surah An-Nisa, يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق من زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام. If you say what arham, Allah say fear Allah because of the ties of kinship that you have and you will be asked about it, etc. If you say what arhami, now this is talking about the status of ties of kinship that you have. So fear Allah because of the status of ties of kinship that people have. I mean, this is ta'wil, this is some of the difference of opinion that you can maybe draw. But the point here is that it's always been a fiqh issue. It's never been an aqidah issue like the shirk that we see today. The second one, where you say, oh Allah, I believed in the Prophet ﷺ, so forgive me, this is found in the Quran. رَبَّنَا إِنَّنَا آمَنَّا فَاغْفِرْ لَنَا رَبَّنَا إِنَّنَا آمَنَّا فَاكْتُبْنَا مِنَ الشَّاهِدِينَ. Oh Allah, we have believed, so record us as those people who have witnessed and have testified to your oneness. You are making dua here by a virtuous action that you have done yourself. Oh Allah, I believe. This is an action that I have in my heart, so forgive me by it. طيب. So this just highlights a few points, carrying on from last week. al-Qa'idatu al-Thalithatu. The Shaykh is saying now the third principle. Anna Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And in this principle here, the Shaykh is saying, he's going to highlight that irrespective of what is worshipped besides Allah, if that thing is animate, if that thing is inanimate, if that thing is close to Allah, if that thing has no special status with Allah, all of it is shirk. Doesn't matter. So a person is saying, I'm asking Jibreel, I'm not asking a stone. Doesn't matter. You're asking a stone because it's the black stone. No, it doesn't matter. I'm not asking you, it doesn't matter. Animate, inanimate. This qa'idah is proving that shirk is shirk. And it also proves, this qa'idah here, that shirk is of types. Shirk is of types. And it also proves that shirk can be confusing at some times and it can be apparent at some times. It can be an issue where someone is clear for some people, it might not be clear for other people. Like we've said, all of these discussion, 400, nearly 300 pages written by Shaykh al-Islam about going to the Prophet ﷺ's grave, is because that there was a valid level of confusion. A person says that this person is elevated with Allah, so I'm asking this person because that person is elevated. I'm not asking a stone, I'm not asking a piece of wood. It's confusing. قاعدة الثالث. النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم ظهر على أناس متفرقين في عبادتهم. The Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم came and he became a prophet when there were so many different types of shirk that was going on. Some people were worshipping different things, and he was a Nabi in amongst all of this. منهم من يعبد الملائكة. Some of them used to worship the angels. They used to say that these are the daughters of Allah, they are the closest to Allah, we used to worship these people. You ask them, who is the one that created you? Rububiyyah. You ask them, what are some of the actions of Allah? They will affirm it. Do you believe in angels? They affirm it. They have a pattern of iman within them. Not saying that they're mu'min, because the action has been nullified here. But it clearly shows you that a person can say La ilaha illallah, but it doesn't necessarily mean that he's going to get salvation through it. This is why these qawaid, very, very important. A person could believe in the angels. A person could believe in the books. They used to believe in Ibrahim being a messenger. They used to believe in the Suhuf of Ibrahim. That's why Allah makes mention of it in Surah A'la. That this is what is in the Suhuf of Ibrahim that your grandfather had. وَمِنْهُمْ مَنْ يَعْبُدُ الْأَنْبِيَاءِ وَالصَّالِحِينَ. Some of them used to worship prophets, and some of them used to worship the Salihin. Anbiya, some of them used to worship Isa, some of them used to worship Musa, and some of them used to worship pious men. And this is where Lat and Uzza, etc. came from, as we will see. وَمِنْهُمْ مَنْ يَعْبُدُ الْأَشْجَارِ وَالْأَحْجَارِ. Some of them used to worship angels, but some of them used to worship trees and stones. وَمِنْهُمْ مَنْ يَعْبُدُ الشَّمْسِ وَالْقَمَرِ. Some of them used to worship the sun and the moon. But despite all of this, وَقَاتَلَهُمْ رَسُولُ اللَّهِ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمْ وَلَمْ يُفَرِّقْ بَيْنَهُمْ. He didn't say, okay, these guys are a bit okay because they're worshipping Jibreel. Or these guys are a bit okay because he's worshipping my brother from the Anbiya and the Rusul, Isa or Musa. No. You worship anything besides Allah, then this is shirk and it's not acceptable with Allah. Now this is something which I wanted to highlight here, and this is a very interesting point. Shaykh al-Islam on page 157, Majmu Fatawa, now says something which is very, very beneficial. He says, وَقَوْمُ نُوحٍ وَقَوْمُ إِبْرَاهِيمٍ. Sorry, let me go back a minute. وَالْمُشْرِكُونَ الَّذِينَ وَصَفَهُمُ اللَّهُ وَرَسُولُهُ بِالشِّرْكِ أَصْلُهُمْ صِنْفَانِ. Shirk comes from two different types or categories. I was looking for another word. Two foundations, or two beginnings, two origins. We have two origins of shirk. قوم نوح وقوم إبراهيم. قوم نوح had a separate type of shirk. قوم Ibrahim had a separate type of shirk. Look at the intelligence of this man. Allah have mercy on him and make his benefit. فقوم نوح, as for the people of Nuh, كان أصل شركهم العقوف على قبور الصالحين. The people of Nuh, their shirk began when they started going to the graves of the prophets and not the prophets, the pious people, and they used to just sit near the grave. This is a blessed place. We're not asking we're asking Allah, but this place is blessed. They had no dalil for this. They innovated it, and this led to what? Shirk. So then the Shaykh said, ثُمَّ صَوَّرَهُمْ تَمَاثِيلِهِمْ ثُمَّ عَبَدُوهُم. So then what happened after stages? This is in the narration of Ibn Abbas and Bukhari, I think it's well known to all of us. First, Shaitan came to him and said, look, these people were pious and they've passed away. Go near their grave, because they used to make a lot of dua. You go near this person's grave, then Allah will answer your dua. That makes sense. Of course it makes sense. Yeah, let's go. Let's do it. Innovation. Innovation led to more innovation. Shaitan came to them again and said, look, make an idol of this person so you can remember them. What are you going to do when you pass away? What are your children? Your children don't know about these people. Make an idol so that your children will know who these people are. So make the idol. Yeah, it makes perfect sense. Makes sense, right? Let's take a picture so we can remember the person. So now you see the hikmah of the Sharia. Some people say it's very rigid. You can't have pictures because we know what's happened to mankind. Man is man, oppressive, ignorant, arrogant. This is the nature of man. And his loop goes round and round. Right. So now he said, look, let's take a picture. Let's take a selfie. Let's make an idol. Let's make a statue. Just to remember. Then what happened? They ended up worshipping. Iblis came to look. The reason why your fathers made the statues, that they used to worship these things. The next generation, oh really, we didn't know that. Yeah, let's worship it. قوم نوح أصلهم أصل شركهم وقوف على قبور الصالحين. This is how it started. And then it spiraled. وقوم إبراهيم كان أصل شركهم إبادة الكواكب والشمس والقمر. وكل من هؤلاء يعبدون الجن. So now there's one thing. Okay, so Ibrahim, the nation of Ibrahim, they used to worship stars, planets, things that they used to see and they used to have awe and relevance for, or reverence towards. So now we have two different types of shirk. And then the Shaykh said that all of them used to, both parties, all of them, part of their shirk was to worship shayateen. Let me ask you a question now. Do you think Iblis has stopped? If anything, he's got more experience. If anything, now he can use technology. He can use the speed of light. People have become more liberal in their culture as well. So now he has two genders that he can play with. He's playing with children. 4 years old, you can change your gender. Not trying to criticize any kind of policy here. But all I'm trying to say is that everyone's fair game now. And I've mentioned this before, and I want to mention this again because I think it's very, very relevant, and I don't get tired of saying it, so inshallah you don't get tired of hearing it. Khalid bin Walid, when he was sent to break down Uzza was one of the biggest idols that the Quraysh had. When the Prophet ﷺ liberated Makkah, he destroyed all of the idols, including idols that were inside the Kaaba, well known to all of us. Uzza remained. He sent Khalid bin Walid to break that idol. One of the strongest, one of the cleverest men that he had. Told him, you're going to see resistance. Khalid bin Walid didn't know what to expect, Allahu A'lam, but he went. And he chopped it down, and he came back. And he told the Prophet ﷺ, what did you see there? Khalid bin Walid said it was a tree, and the tree was talking. The tree was talking. What's talking? The tree talks. The tree doesn't talk. It's possessed. The tree was possessed. Voices were coming from the tree. Number one. Number two, I saw black women who were completely naked, going around the tree, moving in a particular way. Do you see that today, or is that gone? Women who are dressed but they are naked. The Prophet ﷺ said, Sinfam Ahl al-Nar, I've not seen them. Two types of people I've not seen yet, but they're going to come. Al-Kasiyat al-Ariyat. She's wearing clothes but she's naked at the same time. She's wearing clothes. The Prophet said that was inconceivable at that time. How can a person be wearing clothes, be naked at the same time? Shirk is very much relevant in our times today, my brothers. طيب. والدليل, what is the dalil for all of this? والدليل قوله تعالى. The evidence is the statement. Now look at this. The Shaykh is going to say dalil, 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 dalil. Now this clearly shows at least two things. That it is the scholar who will present you the dalil. I'm going to say this is kufr, this is going to shirk, this is halal, this is haram. A person who is qualified is the person who will give you that ruling. And he will have dalil. And it also shows you that the scholar is somebody who is sincere to the people. He wants to remove shirk from you. He wants to remove sin from you. He wants you to become a muwahhid so that Allah loves you in your dunya and your akhirah. You and your family go to Jannah and you are happy. This is what Abdul Wahhab wants from you. Rahimahullah. He doesn't want to call people non-Muslim and go around killing people and cast people to the hellfire. What dalil, what dalil? Because he's bringing the statement of Allah. What dalil qawluhu ta'ala. What is the dalil? What is the dalil that the Prophet ﷺ didn't differentiate between their shirk? وَقَاتِلُوهُمْ حَتَّى لَا تَكُونَ فِتْنَةً وَيَكُونَ الدِّينُ كُلُّهُ لِلَّهِ. Strive against them. Keep talking. Keep inviting. Keep practicing. Keep striving. حَتَّى لَا تَكُونَ فِتْنَةً وَيَكُونَ, until there is no confusion left. So in the khutbah today, fitna can be confusion. Fitna could be desires. Fitna could be a lot of different trials, tribulations, difficulty, hardship. Until all of that is removed and people are liberated, وَيَكُونَ الدِّينُ كُلُّهُ لِلَّهِ, all of the religion, tawheed, and justice, and prosperity, and iman, go back for Allah. So the point here is, irrespective of the nature of shirk, Islam always challenges things which are unjust. And one of the mashayikh who explained this says that this ayah, about 8 words, has 3 very important points. Number 1, the Muslim is obligated to challenge falsehood. It's in Surah Anfal, ayah number 39. وَقَاتِلُوهُمْ, challenge falsehood. A person says to you, my brother, you're at work, for example, and an issue occurs, and your friend says to him, can you have my back against the manager? I've done something wrong, but it's a religious obligation for you to be upright at all stages of your life, even if it's against yourself. وَقَاتِلُوهُمْ حَتَّى, challenge falsehood. حَتَّى لَا تَكُونَ فِتْنَةً, be patient until the injustice is removed. This is the second thing we learn from the ayah. Number 1, we have to be upright upon the haqq. And number 2, we have to be patient until justice prevails. وَيَكُونُ الدِّينُ كُلُّهُ لِلَّهِ, that justice and tawheed and ikhlas become superior. In 8 words, we have a whole profound message of Islam. وَالدَّلِيلُ الشَّمْسُ وَالْقَمَرُ, what's the dalil that worshipping the sun and the moon is shirk? قوله تعالى وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ اللَّيْلِ وَالنَّهَارُ وَالشَّمْسُ وَالْقَمَرُ. All of these are ayat, a sign that Allah exists. Who is the one who gave you the day, who is giving you the night, who is giving you the sun, who is giving you the moon? It is Allah. لا تسجدوا للشمس ولا للقمر. Don't prostrate to the shams, to the sun, and don't prostrate to the moon. وَاسْجُدُوا لِلَّهِ, only to Allah. So you make sujood to the sun or to the moon, then this is shirk. الَّذِي خَلَقَهُنْ إِن كُنْتُمْ إِيَّاهُ تَعْبُدُونَ. So this is Surah Fussilat, ayah number 37. This clearly shows to us, irrespective of how big or how powerful the object is suspended in the sky, still you can't worship it. Because Allah is the one who suspends it. وَالدَّلِيلُ الْمَلَائِكَةِ, what is the proof that you can't worship the malaika? قوله تعالى ولا يأمركم أن تتخذوا الملائكة والنبيين أربابا. Allah has not commanded that the angels be taken and the prophets be taken as lords besides Allah. This is ayah number 80 in Surah Al-Imran. And this clearly shows to us that no matter how close a creation is to Allah, and no matter how pious they are, we still can't worship them. وَدَلِيلُ الْأَنْبِيَاء, what's the proof that you can't worship the Nabi? What is the proof that you can't go to the Prophet's grave and worship him? قَوْلُهُ تَعَالَى, the statement of Allah Jalla wa'ala. وَإِذْ قَالَ اللَّهُ يَا عِيسَى ibn Maryam, Allah says to Isa, when Allah will say to Isa ibn Maryam, أَأَنْتَ قُلْتَ لِلنَّاسِ اتَّخِذُونِي وَأُمِّي إِلَٰهِينِ مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ, did you say to the people, worship me and my mother, Maryam, as gods besides Allah? This will happen on Yawm al-Qiyamah. Allah will bring Isa, and He will say to Isa, did you tell your people to worship yourself and your mother and not me? What will He say? قَالَ سُبْحَانَكَ, you are far from any kind of imperfection, Allah. It clearly shows that He is not deserved of being free from imperfection. Him himself, Isa alayhi salam, or his mother. مَا يَكُونُ لِي أَنْ أَقُولُ مَا لَيْسَ لِي بِحَقٍّ, I can only say what I've been told to say. That's his job as a Nabi. That's his job as a Prophet. He speaks from Wahi. He doesn't speak from his desires. إِن كُنْتُ قُلْتُهُ فَقَدْ عَلِمْتَ, what you told me to say, I taught them. That's what I taught them. What you told me to say is what I taught them. تَعْلَمُ مَا فِي نَفْسِي وَلَا أَعْلَمُ مَا فِي نَفْسِكَ, you know what is inside of myself. You know that I'm sincere. You know that I've completed the message. You know what I've done, what I was supposed to do. But I don't know, and nobody knows what is inside of you, Jalla wa ala. So this clearly shows, how can you worship Isa alayhi salam when Allah is far superior? He's free from any kind of imperfection. He is not created. And nobody knows, nobody can understand the awe and the magnitude and the true majesty and splendor of Allah. That's what Isa is saying here. تَعْلَمُ مَا فِي نَفْسِي وَلَا أَعْلَمُ مَا فِي نَفْسِكَ إِنَّكَ أَنْتَ عَلَّامُ الْغُيُوبِ, you are the one who knows everything from beginning of eternity to the end of eternity, and I don't have that power. Irrespective of how Allah favors people, you still cannot worship them. This person is favored, Isa alayhi salam. Allah raised him. He's alive today. He didn't even die. He's alive. How old is he now? Thousands of years old from his birth. He was born without a father. He was given so much. He will come back and he will complete the religion of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam and establish justice. But despite that, he says, إِنَّكَ أَنْتَ اللَّهُ, you are the one who knows all of the affairs. وَالدَّلِيلُ الصَّالِحِينَ. So a person might say, okay, these are the angels, these are the graves, these are the sun and the moon. I understand all of that, but this is a saint. It's a bit different. This is the Baba, or this is whatever it is. وَالدَّلِيلُ الصَّالِحِينَ, what is the dalil that you can't worship people who are pious? قَوْلُهُ تَعَالَى أُولَٰئِكَ الَّذِينَ يَدْعُونَ يَبْتَغُونَ إِلَىٰ رَبِّهِمْ وَسِيلًا, they themselves were worshipping Allah. If they are truly salihin, if they are truly pious, they themselves used to worship Allah and seek to get closer to Allah. إِلَىٰ رَبِّهِمْ وَسِيلًا, they themselves used to pray salah. Why did they pray salah? To have people worship them? Why does a pious person pray salah? Why does a pious person make dua, make dhikr, and recite Quran, and study knowledge, and do good deeds, and be good in society and in his house? Because he wants to get closer to Allah. He wants Allah to be happy with him, not that people worship him. This is in Surah Isra, chapter 17, ayah 57. If you download the book, it'll be there, inshallah. أُولَٰئِكَ الَّذِينَ يَدْعُونَ, they used to supplicate, they used to worship. يَبْتَغُونَ, they used to have the intention and the hope. إِلَىٰ رَبِّهِمْ وَسِيلًا, to get closer to Allah. أَيُّهُمْ أَقْرَبُ, who is the one who is the most closest to Allah? وَيَرْجُونَ رَحْمَةَ وَيَخَافُونَ عَذَابَهُ, how can I get closer to Allah? This is the function of the pious person. Every single day when he wakes up in the morning, what is the way that I can get closest to Allah? How can I get His mercy? And how can I stay away from His punishment? So if this is their case, how can you worship them? So irrespective of how much we love a person, how much we respect a person for his ibadah and his piety and his knowledge, etc., you can't worship that person. Because that person itself and all of these entities are worshipping Allah themselves. The sun is worshipping Allah. The moon is worshipping Allah. وَالشَّجَرُ in ayah in surah. وَالشَّجَرُ
Surah Rahman.
Yeah. وَالشَّجَرُ وَالْقَمَرُ يَسْجُدَانِ, they're making sujood. The Shams, the Prophet ﷺ said to Abu Dhar, do you know where the sun goes when it sets? Right now the sun, where is it going? You're saying after, Abu Dhar said, I was sitting with the Prophet ﷺ in his masjid after Salat al-Maghrib, and the sun has set. He goes, Ya Abu Dhar, do you know where that sun has gone? Allahu wa Rasuluhu a'lam. He said to him that it goes underneath the arsh of Ar-Rahman and it makes sujood until Allah commands it, go back up. And it goes back up. How this happens, we don't know. How these things worship Allah, we don't know. The Malaika, the Shams, the Qamar, the Ashjar, all of these entities, the Salihin, all of them are worshipping Allah. So how can you worship these things that are worshipping Allah? Some of the ulama have said that the last one that has been mentioned here, Salihin, has been mentioned because one can't claim that the dead are still alive. They become inanimate after their death, in the sense of the dunya. They're now in the barzakh. He's a dead piece of meat, if you think about it. It's just bones. How can you ask that person to just become bones? Some of the ulama that have talked about with Dalil Salihin said that this person now, this thing has become inanimate. What Dalil Ashjar wal Ahjar? What's the Dalil that you can't worship trees and stones? قوله تعالى أفرأيتم اللات والعزى. Don't they look at Lat and Uzza ومنات الثالثة الأخرى? Don't they look at these statues, stones, and some of them were trees. They used to have an idol, but it was actually a tree. Some of them were actually stones. And Allah is telling us in Surah An-Najm that these things cannot benefit you. أَفَرَأَيْتُمُ اللَّاتِ. Lat was a pious man. After he died, they made an idol of him in Ta'if. Uzza, أَفَرَأَيْتُمُ اللَّاتِ وَالْأُزَّى. Number 2, Uzza was a tree that we just talked about, with Khalid bin Walid going there and he's saying those things. That was a tree. So this is the dalil that the Shaykh has brought from this one ayah. You can apply this to trees and you can apply this to stone. And Uzza was located between Makkah and Medina. And Manat was an idol that they had in Makkah. So this clearly shows that even things that have no actual physical properties, solid objects, cannot benefit you in the slightest. The Shaykh continues, وحديث أبي واقد الليثي, when companions رضي الله عنه قال خرجنا مع النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم. We went out with the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم on an expedition إلى Hunayn, to Hunayn. And this is towards the end of the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم's message, in the 8th year of Hijrah. ونحن هدثاء عهد. We have just become Muslim. وَنَحْنُ هُدَثَاءُ عَهْدٍ بِكُفْرٍ. We just become Muslim, we have just left kufr. وَلِلْمُشْرِكِينَ سِدْرًا. And the mushriks in this area, they used to have a big tree. يَعْكُفُونَ عِنْدَهَا وَيُنَوِّطُونَ بِهَا أَسْلِحَتَهُم. They used to go to that tree to seek blessings from that tree. And if they were going into a war or something like that, they used to hang their weapons onto that tree to get blessings from that tree. So they used to go to this place to gain blessings, either in themselves and in their weapons. يُقَالُ لَهَا ذَاتُ أَنْوَاطٍ. This tree used to be called Dhat Anwat. This was the name of that tree and that location. فَمَرَرْنَا بِسِدْرَةٍ. So we came past this tree, فَقُلْنَا, and we said to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Ya Rasulullah, اجعل لنا ذات أضواء. Make a tree for us. كما لهم ذات. The mushrikeen have a tree. Why don't we have a tree in Islam? Why don't we have a tree in Islam? So the Prophet ﷺ heavily rebuked them and said that Musa went through much more difficulty than I have, and he had sabr. Going to a particular place to get blessings from things that can't bless you, going to a particular place to even make worship, which is no dalil for it, is clearly an act which is innovative, to say the least, and it could also be shirk. If you actually believe, like we said this last week, that a deciding factor can make it into major kufr or minor kufr. if a person believes that this thing controls and has the ability to bless, this is kufr akbar. A person is outside the fold of Islam. If a person believes that this bottle itself doesn't have properties, Allah is the one who blesses, but through this bottle, or this bottle can be given some function to give blessings, when it doesn't really have that, then this is minor kufr. This is minor shirk. Because you are making a cause, a sabab, which doesn't deserve to be a sabab. But if you're making this thing the ultimate sabab, the ultimate cause, then you have made this into a Rabbul Alamin. Allah protect us and our families. A summary of the third principle now here is that mankind have one master, and we have been commanded to worship that one master. The mushrik has many different masters, and when he doesn't have many different masters, he doesn't know which one to please, he doesn't know which one to obey, he doesn't know which one to love, he doesn't know which one to submit to. Because today he could be worshipping angels, tomorrow he could be worshipping ashjar, trees. Today he could be worshipping one idol, and tomorrow something else is in fashion and he'll start worshipping that. Muwahid, person who has iman, tawheed, one master, he'll be upon one way until he meets him. But also from this we can see, my brothers and sisters, that some of those people within Quraysh, some of them are worshipping different things. It clearly shows that culture and innovations have a huge impact on the way people end up behaving. And when we start mixing these things and we start creating innovations, then things can become culturally accepted, but it could also be shirk and we don't even realize it. Like we said last week, fingers crossed, culturally. How many times people say it? How many times Muslims say it? Do you believe that you crossing your fingers can change the qadr of Allah? That was written 50,000 years before Allah created Adam. Now I cross these two fingers, probably 3 inches by 3, or both of them 3 inches, are going to change the decree of the universe. I want something, some khair to happen to me. If I touch wood, it will happen. If I wear a ta'weez, it will happen. I will be protected. Culture is very, very dangerous. And this is what we see from here, that culture infiltrated Quraysh. And this is what happened. Shaykh al-Islam mentions here in Majmu Fatawa, and he says that all of this, number one, why is shirk such a big problem? Why is shirk? A non-Muslim might ask, just leave them to it. They want to worship a tree, let them worship a tree. How does that affect you? Why is it so, why is it such a big sin with you guys? Shaykh al-Islam answers that question. Number one, like we said before, Islam establishes justice in all areas, no matter how big, no matter how small. If you go home and you've oppressed your son or your daughter, even if they are 2 years old, you have to hold your hands up and say, I've oppressed you. I am sorry. I have done something wrong. And from this you will get a lot of khair. That 2-year-old will understand that yes, even my father can make a mistake. Yes, if I make a mistake, I don't get angry. Yes, if I make a mistake, make tawbah or go back, rectify yourself. There's a lot of khair that can come back if you do the right thing. Number one, do the right thing. Justice. This is why shirk is not tolerated. This doesn't mean that we are intolerant towards the people of shirk. This is going back to what we were talking about, the Khawarij. Just because something is bad doesn't mean we behave bad towards people who are doing bad. Number one. Number two, it contradicts the fitrah. Allah has created you on a disposition to worship Him. فِطْرَةُ اللَّهِ الَّتِي فَطَرَ النَّاسَ عَلَيْهَا. Allah has created mankind upon a fitrah. If you change that fitrah, then you are corrupting the way Allah has created you. Let me ask you a question. If a person says to me tomorrow, we have a new way of changing tattoos. Tattoos now, you can do art. Very nice. Tomorrow, I can make you, I can make you black. Black, as in you want to become black. You want to become white, whiter than the people in Russia. I can do that for you. It's a new tattoo service that we have here. What do you think about that? What is Islam's stance on that? Islam's stance on tattoos, Islam's stance on changing the creation of Allah is exactly the same. That it is not permissible for you to permanently change your state. If this is the case of something which is your skin, then what about your iman in your heart? Changing, corrupting the fitrah that Allah has created you permanently is not acceptable with Islam. Shaykh al-Islam also says it contradicts your aql. How can you worship a tree? How can you worship something that worships Allah itself? Dependent on... It doesn't make sense. And when you challenge the most intellectual people about, the shirk that they are upon, they don't want to know. And number 4, taqleed and ignorance in matters of shirk. Lead to confusion and disruption. So if a person says to me now, okay, look, this person wants to do shirk, let him carry on doing shirk, you want to be a Muslim, let's just be liberal and tolerate everyone. Khalas, we're living in a country where you have to do that, and that's fine. That's now your religious obligation to tolerate the Sikh and to tolerate the Hindu, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we will say that we will do shirk with them. We have a belief in Tawheed. Tayyib. But now, if you look at what's happened in this third principle where you have people worshipping angels and trees, etc., what's happened? Their culture and their religions become polluted, and they have no standardization anymore. Ignorance has become widespread. And like we've talked about this before, you will find a person with the longest of beards and the biggest of turbans drinking alcohol and listening to music and behaving in a very bad manner. Why? Because their religion is not giving them, or is feeding ignorance and feeding ignorance. So what we are saying here now is that when you start making taqleed and you start polluting, then this will create a disruption in society and to morals and etiquettes and things like this, etc. The Shaykh himself, I don't want to go into it because we're pressed on time. The Shaykh himself actually gives the same sort of order where he talks about angels, people worshipping angels on page 124, 125, and also on page 290, where he talks about people worshipping angels, people worshipping the stars, the moon, etc. And all of that is still deemed as being shirk with Allah. And then he brings dalil after dalil in a very similar format as to what has been mentioned here by the Shaykh. ومن سأل الله بها لزمه أن يسأل بكل ذكر وأنثى وبكل نفس. Okay, going on. So then the Shaykh goes, if a person asks الرياح والسحاب والكواكب والشمس والقمر والليل والنهار, etc., he carries on. Same sort of format in principle number 3. Also, within this book, Qaid al-Jaliyah, the Shaykh goes on to talk about a bit more, in this third principle, about isti'ana, seeking assistance. Istighatha, what's istighatha again? Seeking relief. Istisfa'. And this is when you are seeking closeness and intercession again, and tawassul as well. The Shaykh goes into tawassul as well. طيب. The last qaida, al-Qawaid al-Arba, أن المشركين زماننا أغلظ. The mushriks in our time today, the shirk that you see in our time today is far worse. Shirkan min al-awwalin. It's far worse than the shirk that the Prophet ﷺ saw. Bold statement. The shirk in the ummah today is worse than the shirk at the time of the Prophet ﷺ. Why? لأن الأولين يشركون في الرخاء ويخلصون في الشدة. At the time of the Prophet ﷺ, they only used to make shirk with Allah when things were easy. When things got difficult, they used to ask Allah alone. ومشركو زماننا شركهم دائما. The shirk that you find today is in times of ease and in times of difficulties. It's consistent, it's continual. في الرخاء والشدة. In times of ease and in times of difficulty. What's the dalil? والدليل قوله تعالى. What's the evidence for this? فإذا ركبوا في الفلك دعوا الله مخلصين له الدين. When a person used to go on a ship there was a storm, he feared it would capsize, there would be difficulty, then he would make dua to Allah alone. He's a mushrik. He believes in idols. Difficulty, he makes dua to Allah alone. فَلَمَّا نَجَّاهُمْ, when Allah frees them and saves them, and he comes back to land, he goes back to his home, فَلَمَّا نَجَّاهُمْ إِلَى الْبَرِّ, when he comes back onto land, إِذَا هُمْ يُشْرِكُونَ, then they will go back to worshipping their idols. So what does this tell us? When it's difficult, Allah alone, only Allah can save me now. Only Allah can save me now. The waves are high, my idol's 5,000 kilometers away. What am I going to do? Only Allah can. He's the Rabbul Alameen. But when I am there next to my idol, he used to end up worshipping it. So only in times of difficulty they used to worship Allah alone, but when the times are easy, they used to worship everything. Now, people worship everything at any time. Ta'weed is there all the time. Ta'weed for love, ta'weed for protection, ta'weed for barakah, ta'weed for anything. Difficulty and ease. This shows us, this qa'idah, one of the most important things that this shows us, that even if a person worships Allah alone sometimes, this does not make him a muwahhid. A person worships Allah 99.9% Allah alone, 0.1% he does shirk. Does he become a muwahhid? He is not a muwahhid. This is how delicate and sensitive the situation is. Despite the Shaykh saying this, there is a qa'idah which is very important for us to understand, and it's known in Arabic as al-udhr bil-jahl. An excuse must be made for those people who are ignorant, who act in forgetfulness, and those people who are being forced. A person is forced to make sujood, you can't say he's a mushrik. A person who does something out of forgetfulness, you can't say he's a mushrik. A person who does something out of ignorance, the companions themselves, اجعلنا ذات أنوات, make us a place that we can seek barakah. They were ignorant. A person is not a mushrik because of these three aspects. And unfortunately, the Muslimin have become, a bit hasty in this. And I know of an incident where one of the mashayikh said that a person was doing tawaf around the grave, and a person came up to him, Talib al-Ilm, started rebuking him. He was by himself. He was in a place where you don't really expect this kind of stuff. It wasn't Saudi Arabia, it's not like we expect it though. He was doing it. So the person started rebuking him severely. What are you doing? Fear Allah, hellfire, mushrik, shirk. He said, La, a'udhu billah, I'm not doing tawaf. I've lost something, I'm just walking around, I'm looking for it. You see now, this person has fallen into bad etiquettes, bad thoughts, maybe even bad foul manners. The Muslim cannot be hasty. And this principle is a very important principle. You see your brother doing something wrong, whether it's bid'ah, whether he's listening to a shaykh that you shouldn't be listening to, whether he's doing shirk, whether he's doing something, a sin, whether he's doing something that is not right. Make excuse, find out what is going on. Maybe he's doing it out of forgetfulness, maybe he's doing it out of ignorance, maybe he's doing it out because he's being forced to do it. So when does a person have the hukam placed upon him? Is this qa'idah consistent? No, it's not consistent. When forgetfulness is lifted, when ignorance is lifted, when coercion is lifted, then a hukam is placed on this person. Either he is an innovator or mushrik, he's outside of Islam. But that's not for us to do. As you can see, it's very technical, but this principle is very important for us to at least understand. But the ulama have said that it is lifted, number one, when the proof is established on that person. You say to the brother, listen, brother, don't wear a ta'weed, thinking that ta'weed is going to protect you against the qadr of Allah. Why do you wear the ta'weed, brother? Because this string and whatever's inside of it, I don't know, is what protects, not Allah. What's the ruling on that? That is shirk akbar or asghar? Akbar, why? Because, like we said before, shirk, when you make something equal to Allah or greater than Allah. This string now has become greater than Allah. This string protects me alongside Allah. Akbar or Asghar? Akbar. This string, Allah is the one who protects me, but this is through this string. Why? It's not making it equal to Allah, it's not making it superior to Allah, but it's still shirk asghar because you are making something into a cause which is not a cause. You think something has barakah, you think something has qualities without any dalil and without any proof from Allah.
What if you put faith in something that has a capability to help you, so you can say Allah help me through this?
And this thing would generally be legislated, like we've seen before in the very beginning where Shaykh al-Islam said that about tawakkul. A person cannot have tawakkul if he doesn't take the asbab. If he doesn't take the means to attain what he needs to get, then this is not tawakkul. So a person sitting in his home saying, I want to get married, I want to get married, I want to get married, Allah help me get married. And he said, brother, go out and ask people. No, I'm having tawakkul. That's not tawakkul. It's insanity. Tawakkul is when you place inner and outer means. Right. So proof must be established, number one. Number two, the person must understand in a roundabout way. He might not completely understand, but he must understand what is being said to him. The Quraysh of Makkah understood the Quran, but they didn't understand tafsir, they didn't understand hadith, but they understood, and that was enough for the proof to be established against them. Ya Shu'aib, ma nafqahu kathirun mimma taqul. They said to Shu'aib, most of what you say we don't understand. But they did understand linguistically what he was calling to. So a person doesn't need to know the intricacies of the religion or the intricacies of what is Qul Huwallahu Ahad, all of these things. But if a person has a roundabout understanding that Islam is a monotheistic, etc., then he has to have that level of understanding. If he doesn't understand, then he is still ignorant, he is still excused, he's still forgetful, or he's still coerced. And number three, that he doesn't have any other doubts that remain. He'll say, okay, I'm not going to worship the grave, I'm not going to make tawaf, but there could be something else that still connects him to that grave. Yeah, but he's still pious and he's close to Allah, can't I still make supplication? Not at the grave, I'll do it at home. There's still doubts. Those doubts need to be removed in order for al-udhr bil-jahl to be removed also. Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah, when talking about this issue also, he says that there is something that we have to take into consideration, very, very important, and the Muslims are not doing this, within Salafiyah, outside of Salafiyah. When someone does something wrong, there is a difference between a general ruling and a specific ruling. Example, person X, what's the ruling on riba? Riba is haram. What is one of the punishments of riba? Allah and His Messenger wages war against them. The curse is against them. The Prophet ﷺ saw a person with his head being smashed with a huge rock for eternity for the person doing riba. Taib. A brother comes up to you, you've just read this, and wow, this is a major sin. This is, Allah protect us. Brother comes up to you, bro, I just bought a new house. Lloyd's TSB Bank. Can you now apply this to that brother? It's very important. People are doing this on a daily basis. Allah and His Messenger says this, the text says this, that means it applies to this person. No. These texts are talking in a general sense. Applying a ruling goes back to those three principles that we just talked about. You cannot specify a sin. You cannot specify a particular ruling upon a person until certain conditions have been met. Just to, as we have been doing, a case study and looking at parables between Qawaid al-Arba and Majmu Fatawa, we haven't got time to go through all, but Shaykh al-Islam says something which is very interesting about this fourth principle. The fourth principle again is that the mushrikun, in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, only used to worship those things in times of ease. When times got difficult, they used to worship Allah alone. Today, people are worshipping anything they want at any period of time. ease, difficulty, doesn't matter. The Shaykh says in Majmu Fatawa, وإنما ظهرت هذه الأحوال الشياطينية التي أسبابها الكفر والفسوق والإسيان بحسب ظهور أسبابها. That these things, these shirk and these practices have become rampant because of certain practices that have happened within these different societies and things like that. فحيث قوى الإيمان والتوحيد والنور الفرقان والإيمان وظهرت آثار النبوة والرسالة. When Tawheed and Iman and the revelation becomes more apparent, then Tawheed and Iman will become apparent. When those things become weak, then Shaitan will become apparent. And this is the state that the Shaykh is talking about here in Qawaid al-Arba. That the further we move away from our religion, then the more relaxed people will become with shirk and innovation, and more it will spread, more so even than the earliest generations. And within them were the people who hated the Prophet ﷺ the most. Tabbat yada Abi Lahab. This man, from the time the Prophet ﷺ became a Nabi, all the way until Yawm al-Qiyamah, people are proclaiming the wrath of Allah upon this man. طيب, just to summarize then, point number 1, a person cannot become a Muslim because he has aspects of Tawheed. What is Tawheed? Oneness of Allah with negation of shirk to other than Allah. You can't become a muwahhid without affirmation and negation. You have to have both, affirmation and negation. That's one of the summaries that we can get in for these 4 qawaid.
Is that in a particular order or not?
La ilaha, negation, illallah, affirmation.
So is it negation first?
Negation first, affirmation next, yes. Jazakallah khair. And ibudullah, wajtanib at-taghut, that comes in opposite. So I mean, طيب. But the ulama have said that negation comes first because it gives exclusivity to Allah alone. La ilaha, nothing illallah, exclusive. Number 2, the mushriks of Arab, the Arab mushriks at that time justified shirk. So even if you try to justify shirk, it doesn't make you a muwahhid, even if you say la ilaha illallah. How do they justify shirk? They say that we are worshipping this idol not because we want to worship this idol. That's just silly. We are worshipping this idol because we are getting closer to Allah because of it. Allah loves this idol, so we are worshipping this idol because of it. Or this idol has powers to get us closer to Allah. Shafa'. Qurba wa shafa'. Closeness and intercession. So how about the state of the people within the ummah and outside of the ummah today who worship directly other than Allah? And they don't even have these 2 elements. This is the second thing that we learn from this book. Number 3, no matter how honorable, how great, how powerful a creation is, no matter how fair-seeming it becomes, any aspect of worship to other than Allah is not accepted. Even if at a time of confusion, even if at a time of difficulty, even if at a time where things have become clouded, it's not acceptable. And number 4, the mushriks of Arab had ikhlas towards Allah at certain times. So partial ikhlas to Allah is not acceptable. So just to conclude this book, bi'idhnillah, from next week we will start Nawaqid al-Islam, those things that nullify. When everybody says La ilaha illallah, but there are certain things that could nullify it without us even realizing. And Shaykh al-Islam has a book which talks about 10 different things that nullify Islam. And we will start that bi'idhnillah next week after Salat al-Maghrib also. But just to conclude this book, it's important upon every single one of us, in ourselves, our children, our families, our parents, our progeny that's going to come. We have not met them yet, but we need to instill it from now, the importance of Tawheed. Because this is the purpose of life, and this is the only way that you can gain salvation. If you don't have this, then it doesn't matter whether you existed or you didn't exist, because in the akhirah, Allah protects us and our families. Once we have this tawheed, but how do we gain this salvation? All of us, alhamdulillah, have been given tawfiq to sit in the masjid of Allah, because we are seeking this salvation. You gain salvation because you have ikhlas in Allah. You want to learn and remove ignorance from yourself. Once you remove that ignorance, you want to act upon it. And once you start acting upon it, you spread Islam. Imagine every single one of us did that. Imagine how Islam would spread. Imagine Ibrahim's house became very nice. Everybody had ikhlas. Everybody's doing good deeds. Everybody's acting. Then his neighbor would want to do the same thing. His neighbor will want to do the same. And it will just spread throughout the ummah. This is salvation on an individual basis and on a social basis. And also it is important to know, in concluding from this book, Islam calls us to be merciful. Islam calls us to have compassion. But Islam is also a religion of justice. Even if you don't accept what has been said here, I'm talking to the people who may be outside of Salafiyah, whether outside of Islam, or even if you don't accept these Qawaid, our religion makes perfect sense. Alhamdulillah, all these Qawaid are completely in line with Russian. Would you worship a tree? Would you worship a sun or the moon? Something that can't benefit you, something itself is created. So once we learn Tawheed ourselves, and once we start practicing upon Tawheed ourselves, at least then we are able to present to people Islam some of the rationale and some of the reasons as to why we do things. It doesn't become something which is ajib. And these principles, these Qawaid al-Arba, if mankind had it, they would not be in loss. Because Allah tells us in Surah Asr that mankind is in loss because of shirk and the lack of iman and the lack of good deeds. So ask Allah to make this beneficial for us all and gives us tawfiq and ability to act upon it, and He saves us from the hellfire, and that He is pleased with us when He takes us, and He makes us firm in the dunya, and He makes our graves a place where we are firm, we are able to answer the questions upon tawheed, and that He illuminates our graves, and that He makes our graves a garden from the gardens of Jannah, and that He unites us with the Anbiya and the Rusul and our family members on Yawm al-Qiyamah. And just as we have seen the day of Jumu'ah finished, we ask Allah that after Yawm al-Jumu'ah, Yawm al-Qiyamah, in the future, that we will also be at this very time